Hello YouTube, I am the Planet Rocks and welcome back to another playthrough of Chess of Blades. I want to go ahead and remind you guys to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and click the bell for notifications. You can also follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitch, and you can also like and follow my page on Facebook. So without further ado, let's get going. Judging from the loud cheer, some kind of fight is going on currently. I've always found combat sports to be a little barbaric and rather hypocritical for nobles so enthralled with genteel manners. Maybe it's an outlet for their human aggression. As Franz and I push our way to the side of the ring, my eyes fall on the two men taking wide punches at each other in a sort of hand-to-hand brawl.
Who's that fiery head one? He's positively giant.
Him? He's one of the king's favorites, I think. Doesn't take much to see why. He's built like a brick house.
Franz pauses, casting me a somewhat sharp glance from the corner of his eye.
I hope you're not getting any funny thoughts. He's twice your size, you know. He'd impale you from one end to the other.
How about you just shut up? My head isn't constantly filled with vulgarity, unlike someone I know.
Chuckling smugly, Franz ruffled a hand through my hair, destroying the work I spent on my neatly and painstakingly groomed locks. I pursed my lips together and bare the indignity of it, deciding to focus on the two men beating each other up instead.
Do you really believe any of these brawlers could be our assassin? They seem a little too much on the burly side to not be noticed.
I think you're right. That boy would have probably called out one of them as the culprit if he'd seen them going into the gardens. It's a more obvious murderer than one with biceps the size of watermelons.
Well, he thought I was a suspect. So you should take his observations with a grain of salt, you know.
You're plenty suspicious. I'm sure a lot of people interpret your awkwardness as trying to hide something.
A sour expression overtakes my face, but it's difficult to argue with Franz's point. Well, it's not my fault I'm used to talking to so many people. Is a bit of social fumbling all it takes to be thought of as shady? Father hates being around crowds as much as I do. Maybe he's just so brutally direct that it comes off as straightforwardness rather than acting suspicious. I'm not desperate enough to take a page out of his book yet. Maybe I'll hire an etiquette tutor when I get back home. I fall into my musings and practically zone out for the rest of the fight, which continues on for a little while longer. Only when the ginger-haired man squarely knocks out his opponent does the crowd erupt into cheers, and he victoriously strides out of the ring with his hands raised.
I could have seen that one coming. Let's ask him if he might know of anyone suspicious.
Oh, so watermelon arms. Why not, I suppose?
We step our way through the throng of people, which steadily grows thinner now that there's a break between fights. The tall brawler is getting the blood wiped off his cheeks by a clearly flustered young woman who's probably more than a little intimidated by how his hands are the size of her head. He turns to us, however, when we approach, eyeing Franz for a long few moments before his gaze flicks down to me dubiously.
There's something you lads been eating. I dunna take kindly to just being gorped at.
His thickly accented voice bellows out, deep and loud enough that it seems like it could potentially shake the ground if he were shouting. I swallow my nervousness and attempt to come up with some sort of placating remark, but before I get the chance, Franz suddenly clears his throat.
Have you seen anything out of the ordinary around the castle by chance? We're looking into a little mishap that occurred recently.
I shoot him a sidelong glance. He'd better not mess things up like he did with Alistair. I have a feeling the results would be a lot worse with this brute too. And getting smashed into a Rivian-shaped bloodstain on the ground isn't on my list of plans for today.
Out of the ordinary? I've no clue what you damn nobles think's ordinary. But...
He pauses, scratching ponderously at his cheek, a bloody grin rising to his lips soon after.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I do remember seeing one of the maids scurrying around all anxious like inside the castle last evening. When I was paying a visit to her. I didn't think much of it due to being distracted, but I remember the lass had a pretty face, with big brown eyes and darkish hair on her shoulders. Looked plenty nervous though.
Franz's eyebrows knit together at the man's description, and he flicks his gaze thoughtfully to one side. Big brown eyes and dark hair around her shoulders. Doesn't that sound a little like Hazel's mother?
She was on the floor with the guest rooms then. Did you see if she was carrying anything?
Well, I weren't staring at her hands, but I reckon she had some sort of large cloth bundle. Something valuable, most likely. Yet she seemed awfully shaky for just that.
The brawler raises his mountain-like shoulders in a shrug. He seems to be watching us a bit curiously, or maybe suspiciously. Perhaps we shouldn't attract any more undue attention by asking people such forthright questions. After all, we don't know who might be working against us.
I see. Well, you've been very helpful, sir. Congratulations on your victory.
Brisk but cordial, Franz offers a nod of thanks, to which the large fighter lets out a snort.
You're speaking as if it were an even match. Can't expect you lot to know about real fighting anyways.
He mutters to himself in an irritated tone and turns away from us, shaking his head disparagingly. Franz, however, seems to have already moved on, and he beckons for me to follow him back into the crowd. I glance between him and the dismissive brawler's back, debating on whether it's worth trying to pry any more answers out of him. But I have a feeling we've outstayed our welcome, and Franz looks a little impatient. Sighing, I return to Franz's side, mulling over this new clue. A nervous feeling curls in the pit of my stomach when I compare the fighter's description of the maid to the woman I met earlier.
Excuse me.
A tall guard irritatedly elbows his way past us, and I realize with some embarrassment that we're standing in the middle of the busy path. I grab Franz's wrist and tug him a little bit out of the way, offering an apologetic nod to the guard as he shuffles past.
What do you think about all this then, Franz? Franz?
When an immediate reply doesn't come, I inquisitively glance over to the tall man, who seems to be lost in thought. His eyes are focused in the distance, towards the same direction that the annoyed guard stalked off in. I nudge his side impatiently, and he blinks for a moment before directing his emerald gaze down at me.
Ah, kitten. As much as it pains me, I believe I'll need to leave your side for a little while. Can you stay out of trouble until I'm back?
Fine, whatever you wish. I suppose I'll see you when I see you.
His response surprises me a little, so my words come out sounding somewhat surly. Franz pauses, lips curling in a devilish smirk.
Has parting become a sweet sorrow? You don't seem as keen on getting rid of me this time.
You're just my bodyguard, you know. Don't go getting a swell head.
My flustered reply elicits a chuckle from Franz, who lowers himself in a bow. A moment later he slips off into the crowd, and I lose sight of his broad back in the sea of people. Where is he going off to so suddenly anyway? He seemed fairly distracted. Did some kind of idea pop into his head? Feeling a little disheartened, I slowly make my way back to the castle, shoving my hands moodily into my pockets. The afternoon sun beats down on me heavily, helping to sap away my previous energy and enthusiasm. It's hard to shake a sense of frustration from having all these pieces that don't fit together, too. and I have no idea who my opponent is, even though I sense some of the moves they're making. No, more importantly, do I even have an opponent? I've only been going off Franz's word that I'm being targeted. Maybe I'm just deluding myself into a sense of danger when nothing's really there. But there is that note that Hazel gave me earlier. I forgot to ask Franz what he thought about it, but perhaps it's better I didn't. It's probably related to what happened before. Though I doubt it could be from the murderer. It seems like too blatant of a trap. Damn it all, this is too confusing. I gloomily push my way through the castle doors and into the main hall, intent on returning to my room's solitude for at least a little while. Social gatherings are bad enough without all this deadly intrigue layered on top.
Ah, sir. May I speak with you for a moment?
I turn to see Silas approaching me from one side of the hall, his long strides carrying him forward quickly.
Hello, Silas. What is your fastidious self up to this fine afternoon?
Silas's brow creases slightly, his expression indicating some degree of concern.
Lady Valora came to me just a few minutes ago, seeming quite distressed. She asked to speak with you, but as I did not know your whereabouts, I directed her to your room instead. I'm afraid I opened it using the servant's spare key. I hope it was not too invasive of your privacy, but Lady Valora was very distraught indeed.
Oh, lovely. I suppose Linnaeus gave her the briefing. Talk about a nightmare vacation. I almost feel sorry for her.
Well, as long as you didn't rummage through my underwear drawer, I think I can excuse your invasion of my room.
That seems like an action more befitting of Sir Chaumont, if I may say so, sir.
I give Silas a puzzled look at the mention of an unfamiliar name, and he blinks at me curiously.
Sir Franz Chaumont, the nephew of the Peruvian king. I had noticed him following you closely since you arrived, despite his tendency to keep a low profile.
I stare blankly at Silas with my jaw agape. Franz is part of a royal family?
Ah, I beg your pardon, sir. I only remember his identity due to my age. He made frequent visits to our kingdom along with the Peruvian ambassador, you see.
Oh, okay. Oh, man. Which one? I'm gonna go with I shouldn't pry. Is it really worth trying to ask him more about Franz? For that matter, why do I care so much about his background? It's not like it's any of my business. And I'm starting to get the feeling that if I keep prying, I'm going to find out something that I really don't want to know. However, Silas seems to be able to guess what's going on in my head, because he smiles slyly at me.
I am not privy to Sir Chaumont's secrets, I'm afraid, sir. He seems quite taken with you, however. So perhaps you may have some luck asking him yourself.
I nod, averting my eyes for a moment to try and seem uninterested.
However, he has also shown a great interest towards the young lady Celeste. He has consistently eyed her since the celebration started, I believe.
The perceptive, or maybe just nosy, butler chuckles a little to himself, shaking his head.
Celeste, is it? I see.
A strange, uncomfortable annoyance tightens in my stomach when I hear Silas's words. I have to remember Franz's playboy appearance isn't just an act. But why does he keep following me around then? Does he think I'll eventually give in to him just because he's tall and charismatic? Well, he's completely out of his mind. I refuse to waste my time on someone like that, regardless of whether he thinks he has my best interest at heart. I wouldn't be surprised if he's been stringing me along with lies all this time just for amusement's sake, to be quite honest.
Your face has grown rather flushed, sir. Do you require a visit to the infirmary?
No, nothing like that. I'm fine. I'll be going to my room now, I think. But thanks for your help, Silas.
Of course, sir. Should you need anything, please do not hesitate to request my services.
I offer a slow nod to the butler before turning towards the stairs, closing my eyes with a long exhale. I hardly know what to think anymore. Father, how on earth did you survive playing games like these for 30 years? All this information, misinformation, and conspiracies. It's as if I'm a pawn on a board where I can't see more than one step ahead.
Maybe I should give up the aristocracy and become a monk instead.
Mumbling to myself, I return to my room with heavy steps, all but dragging my feet as I head down the corridors. On my way, I pass by a happily chattering couple, probably on their way down to the festival.
I can't wait until the masquerade ball! Are you going to romance me like a mysterious stranger, Gerard?
Of course, love. Even in a sea of masks, I have eyes only for you.
I cast the cooing pair a sour glance, but they're too enraptured with each other to even notice me. Disgusting lovebirds. I bet he's probably cheating on the girl with her sister or something. Fishing out my key, I unlock my room door and step inside, about to let out a heavy sigh of relief.
Rivian, why in the god's name did you not tell me about this last night?
I forgot about my uninvited guest. I suppose I should have known she'd be a bit testy over me not giving her all the details earlier. Valora, who had been primly sitting in the chair by the fireplace, quickly pushes up to her feet and storms over to me.
Apologies, Aunt Valora. I wasn't sure if the Inquisitor was alright with me leaking any sensitive information, you know.
Leaking? You know as well as I do that I was to be informed regardless. I've been running around trying to patch up this crisis all morning while you were out goofing around.
Well, that's just not fair, is it? She's the one who's the foreign advisor. What the hell do I have to do with it?
Actually, I was looking into more details about the murder for my own, private investigation, so to speak.
Oh, really? Well, what did you find out? The King's men are investigating as well, but if no culprit is discovered, things will surely end in a crisis.
I can't help but blink a little at her serious questioning. I was expecting her to blow off my investigation considering how unqualified I am, but maybe she has enough faith in Father to extend to me a little as well? Although I can't help but wonder if that's more of a bad thing than a good one.
Not a great deal, unfortunately. I did glean that one of the witnesses is trying to protect some woman, and one of the maids was seen acting suspiciously close to the time of the murder, however.
One of the maids, are you sure about that? I'll have them rounded up and questioned immediately.
Wait, let's not be too hasty. Could I not question the girl myself a bit first? I don't think we should rush to conclusions, you know.
Valora gives me a flat, stern glare, her eyes filled with a skeptical glint.
This is a diplomatic disaster, Rivian. If a culprit is not found and punished, we will never be able to repair relations with Proevia.
Did she just say the ambassador was from Proevia? No wonder Franz has been so invested in all of this, as part of the Proevian royal family.
More importantly, I suspect something very sinister is at work here. This incident reminds me of something that happened years ago. Something that involved a group intent on plunging the continent into chaos.
The chilliness in Valora's eyes almost makes me shiver. She looks deadly serious, and I sense an ominous undercurrent in her words.
An underground cult known as the Disciples of Ignatius has been plaguing our government for some time now. They work to destabilize authority, and though we don't know what their true aim is, they are dangerously skilled at what they do.
You think one of their members killed the ambassador then? Do you think they'll try to strike again?
Her lips press together tightly, and she lowers her voice a little.
I suspect they will. And for your own sake, you had best stop interacting with foreigners at this gathering any more than necessary. We can barely trust those inside our own borders at present, and anything you do may be turned against you.
I swallow, averting my gaze a little uneasily. Now that I think about it, Linnaeus probably complained to her about Franz's appearance last night, and I'm sure she knows who he is. Valora watches me keenly for a moment, and somehow I glimpse the same determination in her expression that I've so often seen on Father's face. Soon, though, she sighs and smooths out her clothes a little, taking a few steps towards the door.
Now I'm going to see about this questioning of the maids. We are sorely lacking in evidence, so I intend to hunt down every bloody clue that I can find. Inform Linnaeus should anything else come to light, Rivian. And make sure not to blemish your father's name by getting caught up in anything else unsavory. The last thing your family needs is a scandal.
With that flippant comment, the old woman offers a sigh before leaving my room, slamming the door behind her.
Old bat.
With a mixture of anxiety and anger, I fold my arms over my chest and pace around the chamber. Franz. Could he really be involved in this in a deeper way than I know of? I'm starting to wonder what else he hasn't told me. And if he knows of these disciples, or if he could even be one of them. After making sure my door is locked, I head over to the bed and lower myself down to sit on the edge, fishing out the piece of paper from my pocket. I hesitate for a moment, but finally unfold it to scan over the contents once more, swallowing the foreboding feeling in my throat. Meet me tonight, alone. I have a warning for you. Despite how clearly dangerous this is, I just can't shake the feeling that it's something more than a trap. If someone had really wanted me dead, surely they could have slipped poison into my tea this morning, since apparently I didn't notice them sneaking up behind me. More importantly, meeting this person seems like the only way I can get any answers, or at least a clue as to what's going on. Maybe I can ask Silas to wait nearby or something, just for safety's sake. I'd ask Franz, except, well, his familiar manner pushed down my guard more than it should have. I think I've been trusting him far too much. Besides, there's probably some truth to what my crone of an aunt was saying. He may be planning to betray me when it's most convenient.
Oh, stupid games.
With a yawn, I fall back on the bed, stretching my arms out as I sink into the fluffy duvet. And there is where I am going to call it a night. Thank you so much for joining me, YouTube. It's been a real pleasure. I am the Planet Rocks. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, click the bell for notifications, and do like this video. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter, and please do like and follow me on Facebook. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I am the Planet Rocks, and I will see you again next week. Bye.